Hey you, I have a question for you. America does stand for freedom, right? I mean, we've been told that since elementary school. The United States fights for democracy and human rights, right? After all, the President of the United States is the leader of the free world, as opposed to the rest, whom lead nations that wallow in corruption and social inequality, where minorities are oppressed and the rich control politicians, getting away with any crime they commit, right? Well, no. The United States definitely does not stand for democracy, freedom, or human rights. It stands solely for the interests of its ruling class, and that ain't you, my friend. How, you may ask? Well, it's simple. Now, before I get into it, if you're American, keep in mind that this isn't a condemnation of you or your people. After all, the American people have absolutely no say in what actually happens. Don't believe me? Well then, did they ask you for permission before bailing out the banks in 2008? How about the military budget? Did your dad get a call to give his opinion? Maybe those tax cuts for the rich. I'm sure your aunt in Iowa had a big say in that. Listen, this is nothing but a condemnation of the American government and its ruling class. Anyways, abroad, the United States flexes its democratic muscle by illegally occupying sovereign nations for control of oil fields, or poppy fields, or natural gas, or... the list goes on. I mean, is it any coincidence that the CIA-sponsored coup in Bolivia came right after Bolivia refused to allow foreign companies to exploit their lithium reserves? Oh, excuse me, all that was actually intended to bring democracy to those places. That explains why Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, etc. are such thriving democracies after American involvement, right? It's no surprise that one of the first laws the American forces undemocratically passed in occupied Iraq was the privatization of all Iraqi oil fields. It's no surprise that heroin output from Afghanistan magically skyrocketed after the American occupation. These are all just convenient coincidences, right? But don't worry. America's staunch defense of democracy and freedom doesn't just stop at coups. At home, American media complains of Russian interference in their elections, conveniently forgetting that the US rigged the 1996 Russian elections. Hold on, what other elections has the CIA rigged? Oh, not many. Just Albania, Argentina, Bolivia, Brazil, Bulgaria, Cambodia, Chile, Costa Rica, the Dominican Republic, Greece, Grenada, Guatemala, Guyana, Haiti, Iceland, Indonesia, Iran, Israel, Italy, Japan, and dozens more. When simple election meddling isn't enough, the United States has militarily overthrown democratically elected governments like Arbenz's government in Guatemala, Allende's government in Chile, Mossadegh's government in Iran, Bishop's government in Grenada, and, unsurprisingly, dozens more. Now, why would a government that constantly propagandizes over how democracy-loving it is be the leader in illegal interference in foreign elections, and even outright overthrow? Their democracy must be so good that it has to be pushed by force of guns, apparently. Thinking aloud, for a country that loves democracy, there sure is very little democracy at home, if you think about it. No, really, how democratic is the US really? There is no economic democracy whatsoever, with workers in the US having virtually no say in their workplaces, where they spend a third of their life. Honestly, how is it that the people that make the products, provide the services, carry out whatever task that is needed, have absolutely zero control over how anything is done? Putting that aside, in many local elections there is only one choice on the ballot, and it's practically the same case even during presidential elections. Yes, the ones where every 4 years you have to choose between the capitalist party or the other capitalist party. The American public is so alienated by the non-choice they're provided that voter turnout has hovered around 50% years. Of course, it's completely unsurprising that they would be alienated since the rich essentially get to pick the people you vote for, ensuring that basically whoever wins, they win too. On that point, the supremely democratic US seems to really be fond of campaign donations and lobbying. Every person that seems to run for president just so happens to be a multimillionaire. Hell, all the branches of government are packed full of super wealthy people, while the majority of the population barely breaks $50,000 a household. Funny how that works. And what about freedom? You know what freedom is. After all, you've been told your whole life that your country abounds in it. Why is it that this great land of freedom has the highest prison population in the world? Not only does the US have the largest prison population, but it also has the highest per 100,000 inhabitants. To put that into perspective, China, with a population of 1.4 billion, has around 1.5 million prisoners. The US, with a population of 327 million, has a prison population of 2.2 million people. So with a fourth of the population of China, the great free United States has nearly 1 million more prisoners. Really, an astonishing achievement. That's not even counting all those kids in concentration camps. Oh yeah, you probably forgot about the concentration camps. Now, I may be being a little unfair to the US right now, but do you know what else is unfair? Something that isn't very freedom-like? The outrageous sentences minorities, mostly blacks, get in the United States on trumped-up charges in order to fill up private prisons that threaten to close down and stop funding certain political groups if they don't start arresting and sentencing more people to prison. Blacks are way more likely to be sentenced to prison for minuscule amounts of weed, despite similar smoking rates between whites and blacks. To think, in most places, closing a prison is a good thing. Not in the good old US of A, though, the land of the free. Of course, freedom does have its price. In this case, it's the illegal occupation and theft of land that doesn't belong to them, and complete genocide of the indigenous Native American population. All this, and now America, a land of immigrants, wants to close its borders to immigrants. The irony would be funny if it wasn't so sad. Either way, indigenous genocide doesn't cover the tab. It must be followed by 3 centuries of African slavery that results in the deaths of further untold tens of millions. A slave had 3, 5, 10 jobs, but the second the black man is freed, all of a sudden there are no jobs. Are these the fabled human rights the United States defends? On the topic though, the United States really does defend rights. The rights of fascists to kill, and the rights of the capitalist class to exploit, that is. The US enthusiastically supported the dictatorship of Pinochet in Chile, that arose after illegally overthrowing the democratically elected Salvador Allende. After all, Kissinger did say that Chile's future was all too important for the Chilean voters to decide. It needed the wise boots and guns of the CIA to tell them what they really needed. Let's not forget the Guatemalan dictatorships, all in order to defend the United Fruit Company, which many American politicians and the head of the CIA had direct stakes in. I mean, this is what defending human rights is, right? This is all with forgetting the Somoza dynasty in Nicaragua, the Argentinian dirty wars, the Banzer dictatorship in Bolivia, Stroessner's 35-year dictatorship in Paraguay, and so much more. In fact, this staunch defender of democracy and human rights militarily supports 73% of all the world's dictatorships. If you consider the historic examples of other dictatorships they've supported, the number inflates ever higher. Now again, why would the US ever do such a thing? Go and open your old high school textbook and take a look. All this info is conveniently missing, if not touched on in only the minutest ways, with a hefty dose of whitewashing and cover-up. All this freedom, but for whom exactly? Take a look at this. Images of horrific state repression. Is this North Korea? Maybe China or Russia? Nope, this is good old Uncle Sam, keeping the peace. Oh yeah, those are police units. Well, militarized police, that is. Freedom has to be enforced somehow. Don't worry, these same loyal, well, to the ruling class at least, and honorable police officers also run black sites all around the world, where neither American law nor international law applies. Hell, they even exist in the United States. Maybe you walked right past one, never the wiser. Truly a mark of a free nation, respecting the rights for your teeth to be on the floor. Meanwhile, embezzling billions gets you a slap on the wrist and a laughable amount of community service. Oh, but they got fined, so it must be alright, right? Well, it would, but a fine is nothing more than a big sign that says legal for rich people. You know, in certain other countries, wealthy people that break the law get a slightly fairer sentence, in my opinion. What about our boys in green? Yeah, those boys. Look at them. Ah, look at them. Protecting our freedoms. How our freedoms got all the way to Vietnam and Iraq, I have no idea, but it happened. Maybe it wasn't our freedoms, but the freedoms of that same ruling class to not only continue oppressing the American people, but also to dabble in oppressing some brown people as well. This is a favorite pastime of theirs, after all. Rapists, torturers, and murderers of civilians, and all for what? Some education and healthcare? Yeah, that's supposed to come packaged with, at least in any civilized society. If 1935 Russia could provide healthcare and education to its people, 2019 United States definitely can. But wait, that would reduce military recruitment gains, which would mean less soldiers and personnel, which would mean less foreign military interventions, which would affect profits. No, let's keep killing American teenagers and brown children. It's good for Lockheed Martin. America truly is exceptional. Well, exceptional in its social inequality, oppression of ethnic minorities, the impoverishing of its poor, in its war crimes, its draconian sentencing of petty crime and, in many cases, no crime at all, In its genocidal history, its slavery, which continues to this day, read the 13th Amendment, its crumbling infrastructure, especially for a country as wealthy as it is, and so much more. Read. Educate yourself. If you're angry, then it's understandably so, either for just learning about half of this stuff, or just by being reminded of it. If you don't believe me, then do your own research. If you want somewhere to get started, then give Killing Hope by William Blum a go. If you're still interested, I have a few book recommendations videos up you can take a look at. Happy hunting! That's it for this time. If you enjoyed what I do, then please consider supporting me on Patreon, it really does help. I'd like to thank my patrons, so thank you to Sasha Navaseta, Zarian Arsin, Xiaoyan Zhang, Larry Valdemar Miniilo, Khan, Daryl McFarlane, Ring, Andy Haywood, Allegar Zahn, Faustin, Henry Ashurst, Industrial Robot, Ray Hodginson, Tristan Druyan, Alan Plum, Joshua Dupois, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, Lewis Wolfe, Ren Caleb Lancaster, Libertarian Stalinist, Ahmad Abdul-Jabbar, Wes Franklin, Manda, Daniel Williams, Mia Nakano, Liam Sapanen, at Democracy Expert, Brennan Ruffing, Adam Cherebi, Jedi Davion, Nut Ringheim Lunde, Matt Smith, Mika Argyropoulos, Zatarani, Comrade Bengu, and of course Charles. Thank you, Charles. I'll see you in the next one.